I'd like to call the May 27th, 2021 POSAC meeting to order with the roll call. Jen Archuleta.
Present.
Paula Fitzgerald.
I'm here.
Stephen Myrick.
Here.
Trace Baker.
I'm here.
Ann Oberchain.
Here.
Tony Lewis.
Here.
Janet George.
Here.
Heather Williams. Heather. Jim Krug here. Thank you. First item of business is the approval of the April 22nd, 2021 meeting minutes. Chair will entertain a motion.
Jen Archuleta move to approve the minutes.
Trace Baker, second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. Good. Before we jump to the public participation, just because I have to jump off, Jen, about 7:45, and if somebody can jump in, if you can, or Paula, just to finish. But two items. One is for you all, if there's any interest, I've been talking and working a little bit with Ruth Becker, who's the consultant, who's in charge of the search and the process for Eric's replacement. Currently, it's tentatively to close May 31st with the interview dates around the 8th, 9th, or 10th of July, based on how the review process goes. And so I'm not going to, I've sort of done my thing, but would like to have somebody from POSAC represented on those days. It might be a day, maybe a day and a half of somebody's time. So we'll put on the June meeting agenda. If you're interested, think about it the next couple of weeks. If you can have the time, I'd like to have some representative. We'll get after that at the June meeting. So I just want to make that announcement up front. With that, Nick, I'll turn to the public items not on the agenda. My understanding is there's 3 folks.
That's correct. Let's go to Mary Mulry.
And before we jump in, just give thank you, all 3 of you, for coming out tonight. Just as some ground rules, ask you to keep it to about 5 minutes. I'll try to help you with that. With about 30 seconds left, I'll give you sort of a 30-second warning. And if you would, please, for the record, state your name and address when you start. Was it Mary?
Yes. Yeah,
hey, thanks, Mary. When you're ready, please begin.
Okay, my name is Mary Mulry. I reside at 12855 North 66th Street, Longmont. I have a small 3-acre farm in rural Boulder County, and I work as a consultant to natural and organic companies. I have a PhD in food science and human nutrition. I'm a member of the Organic Land and Food, a citizens group. It's called OLAF, a citizens group in Boulder County. I'm currently a member of the Extension Advisory Board for Boulder County and a past member of the Food and Ag Policy Council. I have been working on food and ag issues for the county since the early 2000s. OLAF has 3 asks of the county, 3 major asks of the county regarding management of our valuable public asset, 25,000 acres of open space ag land. If it were managed as an integrated farm, it would be counted among some of the largest farms nationwide. We have been mismanaging this land and ignoring agricultural lands and policies that were developed with hundreds of hours of citizen input and staff time. We are not following the cropland policy with no public reports in the past 2 years. We've missed the goal of 20% certifiable organic by 2020. And we have a mad agricultural project that has no transparency nor reporting to the public as was required by the contract. The county commissioners emphasize public input, communication, and regular reports when they approved the contract with Mad Ag, and none of that has taken place. We need to, 1, evaluate the lands for the highest and best use rather than use based on historical use and tenants. Regenerative ag needs livestock and restoration of grasslands for carbon sequestration and less row crop production on the land or integrated uses of that land. We need to immediately transition, number 2, we need to immediately transition all lands to organic and regenerative practices and eliminate toxic pesticides and destructive agricultural techniques on all open space lands, including recreational. The science is clear that these inputs, which we are purchasing in some cases with our tax money for farmers, are killing pollinators, threatening the public health, and degrading the lands rather than sustaining them. The public has made it clear that they support organic and regenerative practices. Number 3, we must restructure the departments in food and agriculture for optimal synergies with other initiatives such as the Office of Sustainability, Public Health, OSCAR, and food security, and with the idea to also take extension out from under open space. Keeping agriculture under parks and open space may have worked when the ag lands were first purchased, but there are other ways to manage the ag land for public benefits. The last 3 to 4 ag leases that have come up mention how the land has been badly managed and depleted by prior tenants and must be regenerated. There are projects like Olin Farms to bring badly managed land back to usability, and Macaulay Farms is working to bring back adjoining land to productivity with the city of Boulder. We were told multiple times as a public that the county and the tenants have been good stewards of the land. That is clearly untrue in many cases. Please consider these asks as you move forward with a new agricultural resource manager and director of parks and open space search. The citizens of Boulder County are losing patience with the continued mismanagement of our precious agricultural and food resources. Also, I suggest that you read the Boulder County Comprehensive Plans and ask yourself if you are living up to the goals and objectives related to food, agriculture, climate change, and sustainability. It appears to be a document to be put on the shelf rather than one to guide the management of precious county resources. Thank you again for allowing a time for public input on non-agenda items.
Thank you, Mary. Appreciate you coming out this evening. Could we have the next presenter, please?
Actually, can I ask a quick question, Jim? Hey, Mary,
Yeah.
this is Tony Lewis. Would have you submitted those comments in writing yet?
I have not. I just put them together today and I can send them to the committee. And also they will be sent to the county commissioners. As I know, some of these things are not POSAC, necessarily POSAC issues, but leadership issues for the commissioners. So, but I'm happy to share those comments with you.
Thanks, that'd be great. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, please, Nick. Who do we have?
I'm sorry, I think Nick lost his internet connection.
Okay.
I'm showing Galen Davis, and we'll see if we can get her on.
Okay.
Galen? You know, I have to tell you, I don't know Nick's process, and I may not have access to let people on, so we may have to come back to this, I'm afraid.
Yeah, okay, thank you, Renata. I think we'll come back, and is there, and my understanding is the next public presenter or public participant is not online either?
I don't have access to that.
Yeah, I got you, Renata. Thank you. And let's do this then. We'll move into the land acquisition, and then before the director's update, if we can, we'll come back to that. Fair enough? Okay. Is Sandy ready to go?
I am ready to go.
Oh, there you are. Hey, Sandy, good evening. Thanks for coming out, and please begin whenever you're ready.
Terrific. I'm going to share my screen here. So good evening, POSAC members. I am Sandy Duff, Senior Land Officer with the Real Estate Division for Parks and Open Space. And tonight we are proposing to acquire approximately 17 acres of vacant mountain land owned by Donna Newland for $135,640. The property is located on the west side of Peak to Peak Highway, about 1/2 of a mile south of Ward. The property is almost completely surrounded by open space properties, our Kaufman property, our Harker property, and our BLM Exchange Board properties. And we also have Grassy Top over here and Captain Jack and Brady. So we've got quite a bit in that area. The property is comprised of 4 mining claims, which are the Dewdrop and Dewdrop Extension, the Helen C lode, the Sunrise lode, and the Redeemer lode. And you can see here, this is a road, which is actually a road constructed by Colorado Department of Environmental Health and EPA for remediation activities. And I'll tell you a little bit more about those in a second. So these claims are part of the Captain Jack Mills Superfund site, of which the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment and the EPA have been working to mitigate the impacts of the historic mining activities since the cleanup plan was issued in 2008. The remediation work consists of an in-tunnel water treatment system to neutralize mine drainage and improve the water quality within the mining tunnels that lead to the Big 5 adit and remediation area across the highway. So here is our Newland property in turquoise, and here is the area where the Big 5 adit and remediation are taking place. The remediation taking place at the Big 5 area, including the Newland property, is monitored not only by the county on the county-owned open space down here at Captain Jack, but also by the CDPHE and the EPA. The deal terms for the property itself are we would be purchasing 17 acres, 1 building right, and that total purchase price is $135,640. So here are some pictures. This is looking west from Peak to Peak Highway. As you go through this gate, the road on the left goes to 2 private mining cabins, and the road on the right goes up to the site. As you go up the road, this is the Dewdrop adit here. And so it's got a tunnel going obviously into the hill itself. And this is the waste pile from that adit, looking towards the east. That is at that same location looking out across towards the south and east, and that's Grassy Top over there. And this is on the access road looking towards the west. And this is further out at the west end of the property. It's pretty heavily wooded back there. And this is some staff walking back down. This is the remediation road is pretty wide here. And so the Captain Jack mine lies in the California Gulch, and it was actually based around a vein that carried silver and lead instead of gold. The Big 5 company was created around 1897 to 1900, and that was combined of 5 mining companies in the area, and the mines are in the area made the California Gulch location of one of the largest mining operations in Boulder County. So Boulder County would acquire the mineral rights with this property. A phase 1 environmental assessment has been completed for the property, and the inclusion of the property as part of the Captain Jack Superfund site and the contribution to the groundwater in the Big 5 tunnels and the water discharge at the Big 5 adit on Captain Jack represent a recognized environmental condition at the overall site. So these environmental conditions will be noted in a reasonable steps comfort letter that the CDPHE and the EPA will sign, assuring Boulder County that it will not be responsible for any cleanup work so long as Boulder County takes reasonable steps to ensure that the remediation work remains intact as constructed and that no new environmental contamination occurs. We would promptly notify them of anything that did come up. And as long as we do take those reasonable steps to prevent the treatments from being disturbed and any new conditions from occurring, the county will qualify as a bona fide prospective purchaser for protection from liability under the Comprehensive Environmental Response Compensation and Liability Act, otherwise known as CERCLA. Boulder County Parks and Open Space and our attorney staff are comfortable that Boulder County can meet these conditions. We did this very similarly over at the Captain Jack property back in 2013. So as part of our Boulder County Comprehensive Plan designations, the property here is within the environmental conservation area. And you can see it's kind of outlined here in the light gray or purple. And also there are riparian areas over here at Left Hand Creek and then over at the very edge of the property. The property does have some significant natural communities on the property. And there's more of a close-up of it. And this is kind of neat. This is the view protection corridor. And this is a 5 up there off of Peak to Peak Highway. So it's the highest importance to protect the view corridor along this stretch of the highway. So removing this development right is going to be fantastic if this is proposed. So at this time, the property is used as open land with ongoing remediation activities on the easternmost 2/3 of the property, right through here. The phase 1 environmental assessment did note that there's the open adit that I showed you, which is the dewdrop adit on the property. So after purchase, we will notify the state of Colorado's Division of Reclamation, Mining and Safety for formal closure, and the property will be closed until the mining hazards can be addressed by the DRMS. So we are recommending approval. The Newland property is an excellent candidate for acquisition due to its contiguity with the Harker, the BLM lands, the Kaufman property, as well as the open space properties across the street. So it would be great just for a contiguous landscape of open space in this scenic area here. So what we are asking for POSAC for tonight is a recommendation to the county commissioners to approve of the acquisition. And I believe Mary Boardman is with us. She is a Superfund project manager for the remediation program at CDPHE, and she's been extremely helpful to us. And she's here to assist also if you have any questions regarding the remediation.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. Hey, Sandy, I just have a quick thing and then we'll go down through the ranks. Hey, what's the time frame? You know, I'm familiar with in situ remediation and some of that stuff, but in other words, when would the land, and maybe our guests can address that, when do you think it would be ready or done? In other words, we're looking 6 months, a year, 2 years? What's the time frame for the completion of all the remediation work?
That is a good question. Nick, is Mary on the call?
Sandy,
Oh, that's right. We don't know, right?
yeah, Nick is having trouble and he's trying to direct me because I'm not sure what I'm doing. I'm really sorry.
That's
So,
okay. You know, I do know
let me see
that.
if you can help me out.
Go ahead, Sandy.
Yeah, it is. It is still ongoing. I know. I think they've been doing this probably since about 2008, if
Yeah.
not earlier. So there's still quite a bit of work to do. I think they're always going out there and monitoring that water as it's coming through those tunnels out at the adit. So I think there's still a ways to go on this.
Sandy,
Okay.
this is, and I'm sorry to interrupt, this is Janice Huisman, interim co-director of Parks and Open Space. I do see Mary, and it looks like she has her speaker on and she's able to speak if you'd like to try that.
Yeah, good evening. Hopefully you can hear me. Wasn't sure if I was able to unmute myself, but
Hey, Mary, hey, Mary, good evening. This is Jim Krug. Would you please just introduce yourself and give your address, please, or title?
absolutely. This is Mary Boardman. I'm the Superfund project manager for the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. And that's at 4300 Cherry Creek Drive South in Denver. So regarding the question in terms of how long it'll go on, quite likely we will have facilities on the site, likely in perpetuity. The remediation, it's as Sandy mentioned, it's a in-tunnel treatment system, but some of the features that are located on the subject property are monitoring locations. And so there's wells and boreholes that we would like to use and have continued access for monitoring over the long term.
Yeah. Hey, and I did a follow-up with one question. Has there been any non-point source stuff? Because in my old days, looking at mine sites, lots of time was, especially at that altitude, with snow runoff, water runoff. Is there stuff leaking out now?
So the dewdrop adit, which is on the property, we have not ever observed any discharge coming from that structure.
Okay.
We do believe that that is connected down to the adit tunnel, which is the lower workings, and
Yeah.
that is where we're doing the treatment system.
Cool. All right, thank you. Hey, let's just go through I'll just call out each. If you have questions, please ask away. Jen Archuleta,
No questions. Thank you.
Paula Fitzgerald.
Yeah, I have one question, and that is, my mind immediately went to one of our state's worst catastrophes with this, with the Gold King mine, which, if I remember right, had an in-tunnel water treatment thing, and then the dam broke, or it was broken by contractors. And I just want to know, typically what happens in a case like that is everybody's sued.
Yeah.
And I just want to know how completely the county would be protected from any lawsuits if some sort of failure happened in the future.
Janice?
I can try and take that one.
Okay, or Mary, yeah, thank you.
This is Conrad
Oh,
Lattis,
Conrad, sorry.
Boulder County Attorney's Office. The comfort letter that we are likely to get from CDPHE and the EPA is really the best protection that we can hope for. CERCLA is a strict liability law, but our strong impression over the last 10 years or so that we've been working with CDPHE and the EPA is that they appreciate our presence in this area, and that we have made it easier to assure that these properties are not going to be developed in a way that would cause disruption of the treatments that are being undertaken by CDPHE. So when it comes to environmental liability, you can never get an absolutely clean bill of health and a promise that you will never be sued. But we believe, after doing our phase 1 assessment and speaking with the seller and EPA and CDPHE, that we are not putting ourselves in too much legal jeopardy by taking ownership of these properties, and we're actually helping the cause of getting these properties cleaned up.
Good. Thanks, Conrad. Good to see you. Paula, do you have anything else?
Nope, that's it.
Thank you. Stephen?
You have a few questions. One back to Conrad, if you're willing to talk a little bit more about the legal perspective. Looking at the memo, it says as long as Boulder County takes reasonable steps to prevent treatments from being disturbed and any new conditions from occurring, will be a bona fide prospective purchaser. My question is, what are we anticipating we might need to do proactively to prevent those things? And has that been looked at?
Yes, it has. And we believe that it's going to be very similar to our obligations across the street on the Captain Jack. And those obligations are spelled out in our reasonable steps comfort letter. And the reasonable steps we have to take is that we have to periodically inspect the property and report any changes to its condition to CDPHE or the EPA, and they will take care of it.
Do we contemplate that we have to fence it off, patrol it, take other steps like that?
We will be patrolling it as we do our other mountain properties. Obviously, we can't have a 24/7 presence, but Sandy and I and some other folks went up there with one of our resident rangers, and he was already aware of this property, knows all the activity that's been going on there, who's been trying to camp there over the years. So we are keeping an eye on it, and we are keeping an eye on the other property as well, and making sure that nobody's doing things to bust through the cap that they put on all the waste rock down there.
Okay. Thank you, Conrad. Back to Sandy Duff. How much, given that we're buying a piece of property at this price, how much does the presence of this, the EPA site affect the price here? I don't imagine there's much of a market other than the county for a piece of property like this. So I'm a little concerned about what we're spending under the circumstances.
Well, actually, there is a building lot determination letter for this property on file with Boulder County Permitting and Planning, and somebody can develop up on the property. They would have to go obviously towards that further west area past where the remediation activities are taking place, but somebody could actually feasibly build a home up there.
Well, I'm just thinking about the price per acre, how it compares with other mountain properties, higher, lower. Because
It's right about, yes, it's right about the same. We did kind of value that in that area to be about 150. And actually we thought the property had a couple more acres on the other side of the road, and it turns out it didn't. So that's why it's the 135,640.
thank you. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Stephen. Trace Baker? Trace?
Trace Baker here. Following up on the discussion that Steve had with Conrad, and with my engineering experience over my career, in comparing engineering language with legal language. And I was always pretty horrified by language like reasonable steps, because it's not objectively quantifiable. And Conrad mentioned that we would be monitoring and reporting, and whether that will be put in, whatever contracts, legal documents, that we have to do those things. And to go further, do we have to actually prevent anything from happening? Put in structures to block flow or treat flow, or, is it strictly to monitor and report?
Our affirmative obligations are to monitor and report.
Okay, and will we be monitoring frequently enough to, observe and prevent any problems?
It's very difficult to say, but we believe that we have a good handle on the general activities that are going on in that area.
And I do know I believe it is an annual monitoring that we get notified by, I believe it's either the Department of Health or the EPA annually right now for the Captain Jack mine. So they'll let us know when these reports are due, so that it's a double check that we're going to do it and they're going to do it. And Mary can probably chime in on that too.
Okay, and is monitoring something that involves sampling discharges, or this is just a visual observation?
Visual observation. All the sampling and everything is being done by the state and the feds.
Okay, thank you all.
Thanks, Trace. Ann?
No questions, thank you.
Tony?
Yeah, Sandy, I am struggling here. If I were to say to you, you have $135,000 to go spend on open space, and you came back and said, hey, I found this really cool Superfund site with lots of wells, lots of monitoring, lots of problems. That's the one I want. Like, I'd say, Sandy, did you sleep well last night? Like, what's going on? So, like, I am struggling to figure out why we would spend $135,000 plus monitoring, plus taking on potential liability, when I can't imagine there isn't other property to buy or places to use that money for the current properties we own. So that's my struggle, and I would love for you to help me with it.
I completely understand. My understanding, because I looked at that as well, like we all do. First of all, by looking at the area in its relation to open space, we do want to look at that, and having the contiguity out there. We do want to work with the state and the EPA to get these properties out of public hands, private hands, for the benefit of the public. I think that's a benefit for everybody by us working with them while they're having that remediation taking place over there. We did this, across the street at Captain Jack. And so this one also has the beautiful views, and it does have a building right. And that's also one of the things that we do look for are eliminating building rights, especially in an area like this with the scenic view corridor. So that's why we brought this to you. Hope that helps.
Okay. Yeah, it it helps a bit. I think I still struggle, partly because I think I'm trying to put it in context of, is that our job? And it sounds like maybe it is at the county level of taking private land that may have serious remediation needs and getting it out of private hands. Now, if that's the county's job and open space money is supposed to do that, then I am now better educated. And so I'm just trying to understand, is this money we're spending to buy and preserve as high a quality open space as possible? Or are we balancing that against the need to take seriously environmentally devastated land out of private hands and put it into county hands to create a safer countywide environment? And I don't know the answer to that. I'm not sure if anybody does. But I guess I need to dive deeper at some point in time to understand what the priorities are for open space money, to understand which of those values are the highest priority and how do we want to spend that money. Janice, sorry, I'll stop there.
No, fine. I was just trying to catch Sandy's attention. So Janice Wisman, interim co-director, and normally a real estate division manager, which Sandy's doing right now to help me out as I do the interim job. So it's both, really, Tony. Our main purpose for open space spending and use of all those funds are all the things that we're used to, all the beautiful properties, all the ag properties, all the cultural preservation, history preservation, et cetera, that we're usually bringing to you. And in this case, it's about the county being a good partner to the state and the EPA and doing the right thing for the community and being the one to step in here and make sure that there isn't a house built there, because that would exacerbate the issues. And also, as Sandy mentioned, with the open space around it, that even though this isn't a pristine property in and of itself because of what's going on with it, it will help the county manage the overall area and the open space that we have. And that management of open space is another really big, important piece of why we sometimes buy property. So I hope that's helpful.
Why would building a house exacerbate the issues?
Well, just because it would create additional private use of the area. And when a private landowner owns a property like this, one of the things that came out loud and clear when we were contemplating the acquisition was that as long as a private landowner owns this property, there's a possibility that they could go back and undo the treatment that the state and the EPA have been doing, and they could set back the Superfund effort and the projects. And we want to avoid that at all costs. So while that's not typically something we would think about for open space, we certainly had all these same questions the time before. But our board of commissioners, who were hoping to get connected with you a little bit more than they have been yet, because we've got a new board recently, the past board at the time we did the Captain Jack project were completely behind the idea of the county stepping in as the right entity to own a property like this. So that house itself maybe doesn't change anything other than it detracts from the open space features that are left on the property and the view corridor and all of that. So the house, removing the house helps protect those open space values, but it also keeps that private ownership issue from happening.
Okay. Last question, sorry. And maybe this is a Janice question. Do we have enough money to maintain all the open space properties we have now at the level we want?
We have lots of money into the future, and we don't anticipate that being a problem. We have enough money coming into the coffers every year to do the things we want to do, except that it has been many years since our department's been able to have a holistic look at our operational budget, and that's something we're hoping our new director can do. And that has to be done in concert with our Office of Financial Management and the board as well. But yes, we've got lots of money. This is not going to impact in any way our ability to do all the things that we need to do in our open space program.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Tony. Janet George.
No questions.
Okay, and did Heather join us? No. Okay. At this time, Chair will entertain a motion.
I can see there's lots of enthusiasm here.
Yeah.
Just to move this along, Paula Fitzgerald, I'll move to approve the purchase based on staff's recommendation.
Jen Archuleta, second.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
Yeah, I'm just gonna give you a heads up. I'm gonna vote no on this, not necessarily because I don't want you to purchase it, but because I feel like I don't have the understanding of the priorities around buying environmentally damaged land and being responsible for the remediation of it. I hear what you're saying and I really appreciate it. And I want to understand better what Parks and Open Spaces priorities are around land acquisition with and without huge remediation needs. So,
Is there, Renata, are you still there? Do we have any online public comments?
I don't see public comments for this item.
Okay. At this time, we'll then move to vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 I'll tell you what, it's close enough. I'm going to call out and let's do a roll call vote. I think it's going to be close. Jen Archuleta,
Aye.
Paula Fitzgerald,
Aye.
Stephen,
No.
Trace Baker. Trace,
Okay, no.
Ann Overchain,
Aye.
Tony Lewis,
no.
Janet George,
Aye.
Jim Krug. I'll go aye based on the recommendation. So we have, let the record show, the vote is 5 in favor and 3 nays. Is there any abstentions? No. And we don't have Heather. Okay. Let the record show a 5-3 vote on the issue. Thank you, Sandy.
Thank you, everybody.
And thank you, our guests,
you,
for
Sandy.
coming in tonight. Thank you.
And Jim,
And yes,
Jim,
yes, Renata.
I think we can let the other speaker, Rich Andrews, speak now for items not on the agenda, if you want to do it now.
Yes, let's do that. I'd hate to have Rich, we have to have Rich just hang on another bit. So Rich, are you there?
Hold on
Yes,
just a minute.
yes, I am.
Hey, good evening, Rich. Would you please introduce yourself and your address? And if you could keep it to about 5 minutes, at about 4:30 into it, I'll just shout out to ask you to wrap up, please. So please begin when you're ready.
Thank you very much. My name is Richard Andrews. I live in the county at 6803 J Road on a small farm. My background actually had a lot to do with the last topic that you just dealt with, having worked at EPA and was the mineral manager for the Region 8 district. And did lots of abandoned mine activities. I'll stop there because that's not why I wanted to talk. But if you want to dig into that, I think you made a big mistake by voting for this. I'll just say that. I'm also a founder and member of a group called Organic Land and Food Coalition, or abbreviated as OLAF. I was on the Cropland Policy Advisory Group appointed by the commissioners roughly 10 years ago when they wrote the policy for the cropland policy for the county. And I will note that the previous speaker, Mary Mulry, spoke to that particular document, which the county has not been particularly adhering to. I will say we have a great opportunity right now because of the fact that there's an opening for the director of Parks and Open Space. And that opportunity is to really put in the best possible director that you can find who can deal with really, I heard the word holistic used a minute ago, holistically examine how food and agricultural policy is integrated into the Boulder County Parks and Open Space activities and responsibilities, I should say. It's very important, and it fits with many of the other adopted policies of the county to, in fact, move away from the damaging agricultural practices that are conducted on the majority of the lands owned by we, the public, and I call them the commons because we own them. It's not the tenant farmers, it's we, the people of this county. And as long as we are conducting damaging agricultural practices, which are sometimes referred to as conventional agriculture, we are not carrying out our responsibilities to preserve and protect those properties so that they are productive into the future and so that they do not result in excess pollution of the environment. They do not result in crops that are not even safe to be eaten. And they are definitely not even serving the local public with the crops that are grown by and large by most of your tenants on those lands. And the reason I say that is they are largely growing commodity crops and not crops that are immediately serving our immediate population needs. So some of the things that I advocate and this group that I helped found, the Organic Land and Food Coalition, are that we should immediately begin a very rapid transition to only allow on our lands agricultural activities that are organic. I myself, for the last roughly 12 or 13 years, have been operating an organic farm here in Boulder County also on my own private land. So I'm not only an chemical and environmental engineer and scientist, but I'm an organic farmer. We need to switch to organic. And the biggest reason I will give for that is we need to get away from using the synthetic chemicals that are so damaging to soil health and your health and all of the people that are making use of the products that are raised on our lands, whether they be animals or the various vegetable and plant crops. In particular, one of the chemicals that is particularly now in the news very often is the chemical called glyphosate. It goes by the trade name of Roundup usually, but there are various other products that also have that chemical in it. There's roughly 150,000 plaintiffs in lawsuits against the manufacturers of ounce of that chemical right now. And that is the biggest single producer is Monsanto, and Monsanto is now owned by the German company Bayer. Bayer is trying to settle those lawsuits with a roughly $10 billion payout. And the courts are not allowing that to proceed because it is just plain inadequate. I will also say that the disease that is the primary disease that is at the base of that lawsuit is one that in my own family is affecting the loved ones in my own family. And unfortunately, on Colorado law, due to the statute of limitations, I cannot even join that lawsuit. But we, as responsible citizens, and you as advisors to Parks and Open Space and to the commissioners, need to tell the commissioners, you need to take action to ban those kinds of chemicals on our lands. Otherwise, you and I may become the defendants in lawsuits for perpetuating the use of these poisonous chemicals. Think about that. A minute ago, you were talking about possible liabilities from old mines. This is happening now. And many of the crops, if on the properties that are our properties, we are paying for some of those chemicals in crop sharing leases even. It's not just the tenant farmers that are paying them, we are. So that puts all of us as responsible entities in a legal sense. I would ask you to think hard about that and recommend that we get off of that pesticide treadmill and do it now. Don't wait.
Okay. Thank you, Rich. Hey, Rich, we don't get into a Q&A with items not on the agenda, but I would encourage you, similar to the last speaker, if you'd like to submit your comments tonight. I know you've been at this a while. I think you, I would guess, I've been around in Boulder a long time. You might be one of the first organic farmers, Rich, I think. Pure, but I appreciate your coming out tonight. Two things, I would encourage you to submit your comments in writing. And the second thing is we do have a new ag manager, and I don't know if you've had a chance to meet with them. I would encourage you to engage them, and you know, and I appreciate your organization's effort. So thank you and thanks. Okay. Do we have any other public participative comments?
There are no other comments.
You're back, Nick. Good that you're back, Nick. Thank you. Okay. Next up on the agenda is the strategic plan updates on the plant ecology, wildlife, and weeds. I think we have David, Susan, and Steve with us this evening, if that's correct. Are you guys going to present individually, or are we going to take them one at a time or as a group?
Good evening, POSAC members. This is Tina Nielsen. I'm just going to tee this up for you. And we have a pre-recorded PowerPoint, but we have staff here to answer questions. And let me just get this going here. Can you see my screen?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Great. All right. So I'm just going to launch it, and here we go.
Hello, POSAC members. I'm Tina Nielsen, here to introduce tonight's strategic plan presentation.
Let me stop for a minute. Were you hearing anything? Because I was not.
I was, yes.
You were? Okay, it must not be coming through my earphones, and I apologize. I'll just do this again. My apologies. Okay. Crap.
As you know, the department has
I don't know what's happening. I apologize, but my my controls aren't showing up on my screen here.
Okay. Hey, let me ask, is Jeff or Jess, could you guys do your director's update at this point? We'll give Tina a few minutes.
Sure.
Is that all right? Is that all right with everybody? let's do that. So as John Wayne would say, we don't burn daylight.
Yep.
Good idea.
Yep, that sounds great. Thank you, Jim. I just have a couple really brief items, actually. I wanted to let you know that as of last Tuesday, this is in regard to the hiring of the director position. We had 28 applicants thus far. So there's usually a flurry of applicants at the beginning and then another at the end. And as you mentioned earlier tonight, Chair Krug, the position closes at the end of this month. And then our recruiting firm will screen the applicants, send them to the HR and the board and for selection as semifinalists. And then semifinalists will be reviewed by 2 panels, one that will include county staff and then one that would also include members of POSAC, as you mentioned. It looked like those interviews are going to be held approximately around July 8th. And then finalists, so likely 2 or 3 candidates will advance to interviews with the board on later in July 23rd. We're also hoping that staff and the public will be invited to an outdoor site where the finalists will present in some fashion. So that's what we have going for that. I also wanted to mention that we're working on getting the rec and facilities manager hired as well. We have 2 interim managers for that position at this time, Tim Zick and Mary Olson. They'll be assisting with that, and we hope to have that job posted by June. So those are the personnel items that I wanted to update. Yep, was there a question? Sorry. Oh, no. Okay. Let's see. I have maybe just a few more things I wanted to mention. So you were recalling that we had a little discussion there at before the meeting about the helicopter and aerial field trip tomorrow, 9 a.m. at the Heil Gate off Left Hand Canyon. Turns out the helicopters won't be flying, but you'll get a good chance to see the fire and the mulching activities that have already occurred. Let's see, we are finalizing some Spanish language interpretive signs for the barn at the Ag Heritage Center. So that our CRISP initiative helped us kind of change that up as we were moving along, and now we're going to be able to have some Spanish language signs there. And then we have, unfortunately, 2 more long-term employees announced retirement recently. Steve Sauer, he's our senior weed specialist. He's been in that position for the last 16 years. And Larry Culbinson, our senior volunteer coordinator, who manages our 120 annual volunteer naturalists. He's also going to retire this July, both of them. So we're going to be very sorry to see them go, but wish them the best in their retirement. So I think those are the main things that I have for you tonight. Maybe should we go back to Tina now?
Hang on one second. Hey, Janice, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, thank you. I'm good.
Okay. And I tell you, it's such a stormy night. I'm surprised at technology problems. But Tina, are you now ready?
Well, I hope so. Let's give it a try.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you for your patience. Here we go. Hello, POSAC members. I'm Tina Nielsen, here to introduce tonight's strategic plan presentation. As you know, the department has been engaged in an internal strategic planning process. It started a couple years ago. You got an overview of this process from Ernst Strenga at your January meeting, and Ernst explained how this framework will inform the department's work efforts going forward. You heard from various work groups in February, March, and April, and all of our 22 work groups will be presenting over the course of this year. Tonight, you'll be hearing from Plant Ecology, David Hurt, Wildlife, Susan Spalding, and Steve Sauer from Weeds. So this is the framework, and you've seen this before, but just as a reminder, we start with our desired future conditions, which lay out the North Star of what each work group is aiming for over the long term. The goals lay out more detail about what needs to happen to achieve the desired future condition. Strategies lay out the plan and the timing, and finally objectives are concrete actions to be achieved in 2021. Objectives are meant to be SMART, and I know you're familiar with this acronym. This framework is designed to help each work group find the right balance in their priorities and to create accountability. And so tonight we'll pause at the end of each presentation and staff will be available to answer your questions and comments. I just want to note that while Susan Spalding recorded the wildlife presentation, she is out of town this week. So Tim Schaefer is with us tonight to answer your questions. So with that, I'll turn it over to the presentations.
Good evening, POSAC. David Hurt, Senior Plant Ecologist and Supervisor for the Plant Ecology Work Group. I'd like to present our strategic plan as well as a few objectives for 2021. Plant Ecology Work Group consists of 4 full-time employees, 1 full-time term employee, and 3 seasonal employees. And I will say that our work group has only added 1 full-time position over the last 20 years. Our desired future condition, and it's really our pie in the sky vision, is native plant communities, including communities and species of special concern, are healthy, diverse, self-sustaining, and resilient to natural and anthropogenic disturbances, and that ecosystem processes are functioning or effectively emulated. So our work group has 3 main goals, kind of a 3-legged stool. And I've condensed the 3 goal statements into 3 overarching themes: protect, restore, and engage. And I'll go into more detail about each of those. The first goal is to protect, to identify, preserve, and maintain high-quality native plant communities and landscapes. And to protect something, we first must know what we have and where it exists. So this goal encompasses our data collection efforts, our vegetation mapping, wetland assessments, and our ongoing vegetation monitoring, amongst other work. So objective 1.1, that's kind of a 5-year objective, is to complete vegetation mapping of significant properties, and those are defined as 40 acres or larger and composed primarily of native vegetation that have not been mapped to date by 2025. Our 2021 objective is to complete vegetation mapping on 165 acres of the Billings West property, utilizing in-house staff. Objective 1.2 is to update the vegetation mapping hierarchy for current mapped alliances to adhere to recent nationwide changes by NatureServe. I won't go into detail about this, but I will say that Brad Winkleman, our term employee, has been spending a lot of time, and it's a huge effort to make sure that all the data we've collected over the last 20 years is now consistent with other agencies such as OSMP, the national parks, and Colorado Natural Heritage Program, and so that our data is accurate and up to date. Objective 1.3 is to complete the second phase of the wetlands assessment, targeting emergent and wet meadow wetlands identified as significant in previous assessments or those on properties acquired since 2003, which is when we last did something like this, with a focus on the southern half of the county by the end of the year. We completed the first phase of wetland assessment last year, using consultants and CNHP staff to map 153 individual wetlands across 30 properties and formally assess 46 of those. I'd be happy to share a report. It's a great resource with a ton of information at over 200 pages, and something I could probably present at a future POSAC meeting if there's interest. Our second goal, restore. This is perhaps the largest part of our day-to-day workload. This is defined as to enhance wildlife habitat, ecosystem functions, and visitor experience through the restoration of degraded lands. So whether it's restoring streams post-flood, adding diversity of plantings to a wetland, closing old roads or social trails, or restoring a previously farmed field to native grassland, this goal encompasses projects both small and large, and from the design phase through implementation and construction to the maintenance and monitoring of those projects. We've been heavily involved in flood recovery projects for the last 7 or 8 years. Many of those have come to a close finally, but there are still a few that we're working on. Objective 2.1 is one of those, and that's to monitor and maintain the revegetation of Reach 3 Phase 2 project on St. Vrain Creek to ensure it meets the success criteria outlined in the biological opinion with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and to provide an annual report by December 20th, 2021. Because there's Preble meadow jumping mouse habitat, federally threatened species. This is something we've had to do on projects like this in the past, and our work group has to do the monitoring and the maintenance and the reporting for at least 3 years to make sure we meet those success criteria. Objective 2.2 is another kind of flood recovery project. It's the Niwot Ditch Fish Passage Project. And we hope to utilize in-house staff and our volunteers to plant additional species of riparian and wetland vegetation following the completion of that work, and to work with water staff to identify water augmentation for use to maintain those plantings through the 2021 growing season and beyond. Objective 2.3, draft an RFP and solicit proposals for the design build services to restore the historic hydrology to the Prescott wetland, which was historically altered by drainage channels by September 2021. This work will improve the diverse vegetation of a wet meadow fen complex and restore hydrology to currently dried peat soils, a significant sink for carbon sequestration in line with the BOCC and camp goals. This is a high quality wetland up near Helens Park up Bun School Road, and it would be great to see it in its prior glory. Of course, nature has its way of throwing a wrench into your best laid work plans, even the most strategic ones. After we completed some of these objectives last fall, the Cowwood Fire burned over 10,000 acres in Boulder County, including over 4,500 of those acres on parks and open space lands. So we could have multiple objectives for that work up there. One of them that I'm currently involved in is utilizing fire-killed trees on Ohio Valley Ranch and the Cowwood Education Center to aerially apply wood shred mulch across over 1,600 acres of high and moderate severity burn slopes within that fire. We'll be doing other work up there too, constructing check dams, debris flow racks, sediment basins to further capture some of that sediment before it gets into the waterways. And of course, there's all the work to be done on infrastructure, trails, and fences to reopen the park that many other work groups might be involved in. Our third goal, to engage, to increase enthusiasm and support for native plants and their importance to ecosystem function and habitat. This is our public outreach goal, meant to capture all the work we do with volunteers and the public, including peer nonprofits like the Colorado Native Plant Society, Society for Ecological Restoration, universities, and others. So our work group, thanks to the dedicated efforts of Carrie Simo, we typically host 35 volunteer events per year, doing anything from seed collection and cleaning to plantings, weed control, fence building, or fence removal, and other projects. So our 3 objectives under this goal. First one is to update our plant ecology presence on the public BCPOS website. This is something we haven't done in years and years, and we'd just like to update it. Objective 3.2 is to collaborate with the Left Hand Watershed Center, education and outreach staff, and the public to promote the use of iNaturalist, to document Boulder County flora, both countywide and in response to the wildfire events of 2020 in the iNaturalist Fire Followers Project. And Objective 3.3 is to establish a volunteer property steward program to provide additional eyes on the ground, focused on 3 to 5 properties such as Grassy Top and Prescott that I mentioned earlier, that intersect Forest Service properties and have this potential for trespass, have had trespass, or will have the potential from off-highway vehicles, and that can endanger the resources on those properties. And these properties are fairly remote, so we don't get to them very often, and it wouldn't take much for one OHV getting out into our property to cause a lot of damage. So we'd like to engage the public to help us kind of monitor and watch those so we don't have something negative happen. So we did have a 4th goal in our work group. It didn't quite fit the nice pyramid of the first 3, that outward facing work we do on the land and with the public. I thought perhaps, the department as a whole would have a similar goal, or each work group would. But I did keep this goal in because I think it's important and critical for all of us when faced with the ever increasing amount of work we all have to do. I termed it internal efficiencies, and it's really to provide up-to-date, accurate, and timely input and direction for management and identify actions to provide internal efficiencies that benefit our work group and the department as a whole. And this goal is really, our work group's commitment to be forward-looking and to provide a timely response to department efforts like management plans, and to make sure that the data we're supplying to the public and to the department is up to date and accurate to the best of our knowledge. The two objectives this year focus on our native seed program. We provide seed mixes to in-house disturbances such as trail work, building bathrooms, tearing down structures, etc. Typically, those are really site-specific, and it can take some time to get those together. And we really like to streamline that process so it would help our staff and the different work groups that we're providing those to. And objective 4.2 is to research available inventory software to identify potential solutions to more efficiently track that seed collection, storage, and availability. And that's all I have from the Plant Ecology team. Here we are pre-pandemic, after just getting out of an escape room with like 47 seconds to spare, kind of humbling. If you want to see how your team handles communication and problem solving under stress, this is a great team building exercise. So with that, I'll take some questions if you have any, or wait until after the other groups present their strategic plan.
Yeah, thanks, David. I think we'll take it one at a time.
Hello,
And since it's information only, I'll just throw it out to the group. But just one comment. At the beginning of your presentation, you said that there was only, you haven't had staff in 20 years. Is that correct? You lose him? David?
That's what I heard.
Trying to.
David, are you there? Hey, David.
POSAC, this is Tina Nielsen. I'm not sure if, because I've got my sound sharing on, if that is affecting David. So if it's all right with you, maybe we could continue with the presentations and take all questions at the end.
Yeah, let's do that then again.
Okay. All right.
Go forward.
Here we go.
Actually, can you hear me now?
Oh, there he is. Hey, David, I just had a quick question, and that was, is at the beginning of your presentation, you said, and I just, and I'm not challenging it, but you've had no new staff in 20 years?
We have only added one position, and a full-time position, since 2001.
So if I ask you, David, looking at your workload, how many more people would you need?
Well, for my pie in the sky desired future condition, I would take 3 or 4, but I'd be happy with even just one.
Okay, fair enough. No, that's good. Hey, I'll throw it open to the other POSAC members. Any questions for David?
Yeah, Trace Baker here. Thank you, David. In the packet that came out to POSAC, there was the objective 1-2, and used a couple of phrases that I'd like to, if you could define them for me, please. And one was mapped alliances, and the other one was identify individual polygon data to the association level. And I know what the polygons are, but what does association level mean?
Yeah, good question. And that's part of the U.S. National Vegetation Classification System that we use for our vegetation mapping. And it's this very large hierarchy, probably of, I don't know, 9 different levels, that breaks it down from temperate forest to, Rocky Mountain forest, down to Southern Rocky Mountain forest, down to ponderosa pines, and it gets finer and finer detail. So the alliance and the association level are the 2 finest details. So an alliance could be a ponderosa pine savanna, and the association would be even a finer level detail that might be a ponderosa pine, mountain muley, chokecherry association. And so in the past, we've kind of typically mapped to the alliance level for our vegetation mapping, thinking, we may not manage it that much differently, that land to the association level. But agencies like Colorado Natural Heritage Program, they go down to the association level And that's how they rank these plant communities, as whether they're vulnerable or imperiled or critically imperiled. So we'd like to get ours down in a little finer detail so that when we say we do have this association, or we're saying we have an association on the landscape that's critically imperiled, we know that's exactly what it is there that we're representing and sharing with the department and the public, and not some larger alliance level that may or may not be that exact mix of species.
Okay, that helps. Thank you.
Thanks. Any others? Thank you, David, for coming out tonight. Thank you for all the good work that you do. We will go to wildlife next, please, Tina.
Okay. Hello, I'm Susan Spalding, Senior Wildlife Biologist with Boulder County Parks and Open Space. And tonight I'll be presenting an overview of the Wildlife Group's strategic plan, and then give you some more specifics of 2021 planned and accomplished objectives. So wildlife staff consists of 4 permanent, 2 term, and 2 seasonal biologists. We are a diverse group of professionals with a variety of skill sets. Our focus areas are listed here and include aquatics, terrestrial, avian, and large mammals. The Wildlife Group's desired future condition states, diverse and representative habitats and landscape connectivity are preserved, conserved, and enhanced to ensure biological diversity and ecological integrity at a regional scale. Natural processes, including disturbance regimes, are embraced to ensure complete ecosystem function. And here are our goals. They focus on preservation, conservation, restoration, landscape connectivity, natural disturbances, and management. In the next few slides, I'll focus on a couple of our goals and how we've actualized them into project accomplishments for 2021. Okay, so focusing on goal 1, preserve wildlife habitat to ensure protection from anthropogenic impacts in order to maintain regional native biodiversity. And objective 1.1, work collaboratively with adjacent land and wildlife management agencies to ensure landscape level coordination. So this is a big focus for our program with many, many examples. I've highlighted 3 here, including working with CPW to collar our elk herds to determine movement patterns and timing. One specific highlight from 2021 is the elk collaring study with CPW, which placed 40 collars on elk from the south in Jefferson County to the north in North Boulder, and this includes elk at Caribou Ranch and Walker Ranch. We also conduct Preble's meadow jumping mouse surveys to assess habitat conditions and where the mice are present. This allows better coordination with our neighbors on areas to target for habitat maintenance and in some cases acquisitions. We are recently involved in the federal Preble's Recovery Plan objective of establishing a site conservation team within the St. Vrain Basin. The partners include Fish and Wildlife Service, City of Boulder, Jefferson County, CPW, Left Hand Watershed Center, and St. Vrain Left Hand Water Conservancy District, to name a few. Okay, so goal 2, conserve wildlife habitat to ensure native biodiversity is maintained in a multiple use focused landscape while allowing for sustainable use of natural resources. This goal focuses on multi-use areas and striking a balance. The project we are aiming to complete in 2021 is the formalizing of the Blue Jay mine site. The Hoist House has a maternity colony of bats, so we want to secure the site, which is experiencing some issues with public camping and fire building inside the Hoist House. So this project focuses on safety for the public and the bats. And another mention here of our species conservation and recovery plans, which were presented to POSAC in February. The Blue Jay Mine project is directly linked to these recovery plans, including the protection measures listed in our long-legged Myotis conservation plan. And of course, this is a photo of the Blue Jay Mine itself, which is located near Jamestown. Okay, so now on to goal 4, promote and manage for functional landscape connectivity at multi-scale to maintain natural movement patterns for native species. Objective 4.1, conduct baseline study of fragmentation and permeability of Boulder County with partner agencies included. So, and we outlined several specific actions, including analysis of habitat effectiveness, determining threats and impediments to connectivity, and utilizing the results to inform the initiatives outlined in the department's climate action and mitigation plan. So we accomplished this permeability study in 2020 and 2021. And this is the resulting visual representation of the habitat modeling done through our small grants program by Dr. David Theobald, who's associated with CSU. And this was in partnership with the City of Boulder and Jefferson County. So this work was integral in getting baseline of current fragmentation. You can see here that the northwest part of Boulder County is the least fragmented and includes the North St. Vrain, Western Ohio Valley Ranch, Hall 2, Hall Ranch, and Central Gulch. This model can be taken down to smaller scales to identify areas important for habitat connectivity for different ecological levels as well. So another objective associated with Goal 4 is to establish wildlife crossings. This objective is outlined in our Red Hill Hunt Management Plan, and at a larger level, wildlife connectivity and movement corridors are being prioritized by Governor Polis. At a smaller scale, we partnered with Northern Water to establish 3 crossings across the Southern Supply Canal at the Ron Stewart Preserve at Robert Mountain. And here is what those crossings look like. This is a wildlife bridge across the canal to help elk and other animals get across the concrete-sided canal safely. As I said, there are 3 crossing locations now, and we partnered with Northern Water on this project. All right, so with that, I thank you for your attention tonight. Tim Schaefer's here for any questions you might have. And this is a picture of our virtual.
Thank you. I'm going to.
Last year. Thank you.
Oh, thanks, Tina. Hey, I'm going to jump off. Jen, are you good? And I'll open it up to the group to questions. Is Jen still there?
Yep, sorry. Yeah, I'm good.
Yeah,
I'm good to
okay.
go for
Thank you all. Thank you all. Have a good weekend.
Yeah. Okay.
Hey,
so I
this
guess-
is Janet.
Go ahead, Janet.
Yeah, I had a question if that's okay. I was looking at, read the packet that we got and then looking at the wildlife goals. And there's a 5 and 6 that weren't mentioned too much, especially 6, manage wildlife populations. Tim, can you flesh that out a little bit? It's a bit of a challenge because a lot of species of wildlife are so mobile that it's a big task for any one group to actually try to manage wildlife populations. So can you guys flesh that out a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Be happy to provide maybe an example to help maybe illustrate that. One of our objectives, let's see, this is, I'm looking under the goals right now of which objective it is.
Yeah, I didn't see any objectives in the packet, so that's why I was asking the question.
Yeah, so objective 1, I'm not seeing it right now. I don't want to waste your time looking for it. There's an objective in there as an example. We can manage wildlife populations, and that's really captures management of both native and non-native species to the extent that we can. Really, the wildlife are held in the public trust and managed by the state, and we understand that, and we work closely with CPW and management of those populations, as you're well aware, Janet. One example, my colleague Matt Kobza has been working a lot with northern leopard frog and partnering that with the City of Boulder Open Space and Mountain Parks in their program as well. And one of the strategies for trying to promote, northern leopard frog is a native amphibious species here that is in decline, as are a lot of other herpetiles. And one of the things that really impacts them is the presence of non-native bullfrog species that will feed on them and the northern leopard frog egg masses. So one of the strategies for trying to promote conservation of that native northern leopard frog is to eradicate bullfrogs in those areas where we have good breeding populations or good breeding sites that have potential to produce northern leopard frogs. So that's an example of managing non-native wildlife populations. And I'm maybe going to struggle to think of a native population example. It's a little more broad, as I said, that's really in the hands of Colorado Parks and Wildlife in most cases, but like I said, we partner with that agency a lot. And I think Susan gave a good example of that with the elk study in her presentation. Does that help?
Yeah, thank you.
Trace
Any other
Baker.
questions?
Yeah, Trace Baker here. Steve, Tim got two questions. In the packet that POSAC received, Goal 5, allow or recreate natural disturbance processes. Could you give me an example of one that would be recreated?
Sure, and I guess to capture, the essence here is that we understand that these natural physical processes are often driving ecosystem and ecosystem structure and that native diversity there. And I think the obvious one, or two that we're really familiar with, are floods and fire. And fire is, a really challenging thing, and we've had, decades of fire suppression throughout the Front Range and other places in the country as well. And there's a lot of places in the wildland urban interface, which is where we live, that we can't really just let fires burn naturally as they would occur naturally when we have so much infrastructure and private property and lives and that at risk. So one of the things that we do through our Parks and Open Space program, and certainly Forest Service does this as well, is does some thinning and mitigation work on those properties to try and bring sort of the stand structure and the vegetative component back into that natural range of what you would expect to occur there, kind of pre-European settlement, when things really started to change and we were manipulating how fires and forests would naturally function. And then when those are kind of set with those prescriptive treatments to manipulate the vegetation and put it into that more natural state, we can put prescriptive fire on the landscape and let fire burn through the forest to try and maintain it and promote the natural effects of fire in the forest. Like in our lower montane ecosystems, where we have these open ponderosa pine savannas, fire would burn through those at that's a low intensity, high frequency fire regime. And so fire would occur there between, I think the range of years has changed over time, but it's, I think, every 2 to 7 years. And it would burn through the understory, the grassy understory, and it would kill a lot of the seedlings that were coming in of the ponderosa pine and kind of keep that open ponderosa pine savanna kind of forest structure where you have groups of 5 to maybe a dozen larger ponderosas with a good break in the canopy in that open grassy area. And that's really driving that system structure.
Okay, thank you. Second question, in the PowerPoint presentation, in the slide on the Blue Jay mine, there was a list of threats, and one was wind energy, and I presume that means the wind exerting a force on the structure that would cause it to collapse or be damaged, versus wind energy is producing electricity?
I think wind energy, and I'll have to, forgive me, I'm not as familiar with that project, but I think it was really kind of referencing the general threats to bats. And, one of the things that we talked about, and I worked intensively with some others on the update to the environmental resources element back in that was approved in 2013 and adopted. And we sort of revisited the species of special concern list there. And part of that was really looking at the threats that were imposed on species or groups of species. And bats are threatened with, white nose syndrome and other things throughout a good chunk of their range. And Boulder County is actually potentially a gem of conservation for bats throughout the nation. And we have really good bat populations, and we don't have any evidence of white nose syndrome, I don't think, here at this point, at least last time I was in touch with that. But a general threat for bat populations is wind energy, where bats can be struck by the wind turbines. So it's just one of those compounding threats, I guess, for the list of threats that those guys encounter.
Okay, that helps a lot. Thank you very much, Tim.
Sure.
Any other questions from POSAC? Okay, back to you, Tina.
Okay, here we go.
Good evening. My name is Steve Sauer. I'm the Boulder County Weed Coordinator, and I'm here tonight to present our Work Group 2021 Objectives and Strategic Plan. As an introduction to our staff, we have 4 full-time employees, of course myself, in addition to Joe Swanson, who is a resource specialist. His area that he manages is mainly the parks, trails. Jim Sebastian, who focuses on the ag properties, and Malcolm Wiley, who mainly focuses on the roadsides. In addition to that, we also have 7 seasonal employees who are very valuable and really contribute a great deal to our work. As a little bit of an overview of our work group, I'd like to mention a few things. First of all, we manage approximately 40,000 acres of open space. In addition to that, we have 650 miles of roadside that we also manage in the county. We like to prioritize education and outreach. We collaborate to a great degree with CSU and industry folks on what is and isn't working. To that end, we do a lot of research projects to identify things that we think will be better weed management tools. Some of these actually have had great local, state, and also national implications with the research that we've done. We're interested in innovative new tools to increase success. We like to believe we're an experienced team. We have a lot of in-depth knowledge on restoration. And also some of the key focus areas include eliminating invasive species to benefit pollinators, wildlife, habitat, and really the overall ecosystem sustainability that we have been entrusted with to manage here in Boulder County. Now, because of these things that I just mentioned, this had a great effect on determining what our desired future condition would be. When we were coming up with this, we took all these things into account, and this is what we came up with as our desired future condition. We would like a diverse habitat for native flora and fauna through a strategic reduction in noxious weed populations to support open space values. Now, I might also mention that our work is actually guided by the noxious weed law that the state of Colorado put into effect in the early 2000s. And what this did was it divided weeds into 3 basic categories: List A, B, and C weeds. List A weeds are weeds that have to be eradicated. List B weeds are control and suppression and hopefully eradication. And list C weeds are weeds that we just suppress. Now, these are determined by actually the amount of different weed species there are in each of these categories. So because there are a smaller amount of list A weeds, the state has determined those can be eradicated. List B weeds, there are of course more, and list C weeds basically are ones that have been determined that cannot be completely eradicated because of the amount of weeds that are present in that particular category. I might also mention that we use an IPM type of weed management, which means integrated pest management is a factor, or actually contains 4 different factors or different styles of management. They are mechanical, cultural, biological, and the use of herbicides. So the work group goals that we came up with, we'd like to eliminate List A and contain or eliminate the populations of County List B. Unfortunately, for some reason or other, Boulder County has more List A weeds, 12 of them, than any place, any other county in the state of Colorado. The second goal was we wanted to improve native grasslands and other natural systems to increase grazing, wildlife, and pollinator habitat. Number 3, control noxious weeds along county and regional trails to ensure a safe and pleasant visitor experience. And then 4, increase weed control along county right-of-ways for control of listed species safety and visual attractiveness. Goal number 1 Like I mentioned, we have more List A weeds than anybody in the state of Colorado. Here's pictured one of the weeds that we have, Mediterranean sage. Our objective for List A is to increase treated areas, an additional 10% for an additional 250 acres monitored every year. And I'd like to say that we're well on our way of achieving that. List B weeds, as you can see pictured here in this one, Canada thistle. Some of the other List B weeds that you might recognize are Dalmatian toadflax, diffuse snapweed, are just a few. We'd like to treat an additional 15% of those weeds on a yearly basis. And also another objective would be to work with our GIS group to translate the maps that we do to a database showing the trend of the weed populations. We map all weed applications, and this goes along with the second objective there, because we want to make sure what we are doing is working and that we are going in the right direction and decreasing the weed population in the county. The second goal, improve native grasslands and other natural systems to increase grazing, wildlife, and pollinator habitat. So under that particular goal, our objectives are to treat 1,000 acres in the southeast grasslands, which I identified, or which I would like to identify as maybe the Mayhofer property, Tommy Thompson, and some of those in that part of the county. And also treat an additional 100 acres at Ohio Valley Ranch for cheatgrass, broadleaf weeds, and other grassland restoration. We have really been successful over the last 4 or 5 years in developing a program to actually carry out this goal. In working with CSU and industry, we have discovered a herbicide that we can use that will help us attain this goal. Here on the left, you can see before application pictures. And then on the right, you can see what happened after application. We just basically eliminated a winter annual grass, an invasive winter annual grass, which is cheatgrass, and we attained these results that you see on the right. And I will like to mention that we didn't plant any additional forbs. These are forbs that were actually in the ground and were retarded or held back by the cheatgrass that was there. So by eliminating the cheatgrass, we were able to attain the picture that you see there on the right. Goal number 3, control noxious weeds along county and regional trails to ensure a safe and pleasant visitor experience. Annually, we review new properties that we buy where new trails are put in and trailheads. We would like to treat as an objective there in the second one about or approximately 20 miles of primitive trails during the growing season, and then also treat improved trails along during the growing season. And again, I'd like to show you some results that we've attained. On the left, you can see that this trail, not what we would call a great visitor experience to have when you're hiking these trails. It has, several different weeds. The ones that are prominent in this picture are the cheatgrass and the feral rye. After one treatment and 8 months after the treatment, you can see what we attained on the right. Just a much more vigorous and better looking ecosystem. We've got forbs there that are growing, again, great for pollinator habitat. And again, these were forbs that were present in the soil profile, but were just being retarded in growth by the cheatgrass that was there. Number 4, increase weed control along county rights-of-way. As I mentioned, we have 650 miles of county right-of-way that we maintain. We annually mow this 3 times during the season. And then also we spot treat for noxious weeds using selective herbicides based on monitoring results that we see throughout the growing season. As an example of what we've done, This is an after picture, of course, of a guardrail. And many of you may have noticed throughout the county that sometimes guardrails grow up into grasses and weeds and are very difficult to see. This is very important for not only visual attractiveness to control these weeds in the guardrail, but also for safety aspects because of line of sight. So we're very cognizant of the safety issues that are involved, not only with motorists, but bicyclists and other people, joggers that may use the roadsides in these particular areas, and we want to make sure it's a safe environment. So this is what we've taken to doing in the last couple of years, is trying to control some of this vegetation along roadsides besides our annual control measures of mowing and also spot treating with herbicides. So this gives you an idea of hopefully what things will look like in the future as we continue to monitor and treat these roadsides. So in closing, hopefully this has given you a little bit of an idea of what the Weeds Work Group actually do. We have an ever-changing landscape, as you can imagine. We are sometimes reactive as well as proactive in our approach to weed control, but we take into account the importance of weed control. We want to increase our wildlife and pollinator habitat, and also have a safe and pleasant visitor experience for the folks that use it in Boulder County. So again, I thank you, and here's wishing better weed control and a better opportunity to take care of the grounds that the county residents have entrusted us to take care of. Thank you very much.
Okay, I'm going to stop sharing.
Hey, Tina, I have a quick question about the weed, or else, I guess, Steve, I have a question about the weed. I haven't really noticed a lot of the county signage lately, but I was curious because I was up hiking and I saw that someone had picked a bunch of wildflowers, including weeds, and then just left a pile of them, at the bottom of the trail. And I was wondering if there was any kind of signage to indicate to people to not pick any flowers at all, but especially not to spread weeds around.
Yeah, that's interesting because we've had that problem before. We really like the help, but what part of the problem that we see out on the trails is that sometimes people think that they're actually pulling weeds and they aren't weeds, and so it causes a problem and also creates more of a disturbance. So as far as your question goes about signage, we really don't put any signage out, warning people that that's not something they should do. If we're out, doing weed control and we see that, we'll definitely mention it to the public. But as far as signage, we don't really have any out there.
Yeah, I was wondering maybe if we could look into it, because not only with respect to spreading weeds, but also, protecting pollinators' food source. Because if people could protect picking all the wildflowers, then the pollinators are also going to have an issue. So there's this whole thing that I feel like if we could couch it in something about, pollinators as well, people might be more amenable to it because people like bees. I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's definitely something we'll look into. That's a good idea. We'll look into it.
Jen,
thank you for mentioning it.
This is Conrad Lattis, the County Attorney's Office. While there might not be signs specific to the impacts to pollinators of pulling flowers, our rules and regulations are very clear that you're not allowed to pick anything. You're not allowed to pick or plant anything when you're on open space. So it is a violation of our open space rules if anybody picks anything, whether it's a weed or not. So there are signs that do have the rules which say you're not allowed to pick anything.
Okay, yeah, and I've seen the rules, but I don't think people read the rules. I think if it was more of a sign that was a nice sign that had bees and please don't steal bees' food or something like that, people might actually care.
Yeah, and I will mention that we have actually put some signage out at 4 different properties. Only 3 of them still exist because one burned up on the Heil fire, informing people about weeds and the weeds that may be on that property. We don't have anything about pollinators on there, but we do have signage of that type.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions for Steve?
I have a question. Steve, this is Paula Fitzgerald, and thank you for your work. I understand you're about to retire, so good luck with that.
Hi, thank you.
I'm sure it'll be big shoes to try to fill, years of experience and all that. But my question is, and kind of in reference to one of the public that discussed at the beginning of the agenda, just about what we're doing to try to move towards organic practices. And in terms of the herbicides you're using, are we using some with glyphosate? And are there other alternatives? Are there other products that could be used instead? I understand they might not be as effective. They might require more application. I don't know. If you can just talk generally about that whole issue there, I'd appreciate it.
Sure, and I won't say that we haven't used glyphosate. We have used glyphosate in the past, and we still do to a certain extent. But we're also looking at different formulations, different herbicides, and herbicides are going in a different direction now. Instead of putting on quarts or more per acre, we're putting on ounces per acre. So some of those treatments that you saw that increased the pollinator habitat were applications where we only used 5 ounces of a product on a whole acre of land. And it's going in that direction. And I think as we do more research, which I pointed out is a very large part of our program, we researched this one product since 2014. And so we have a lot of knowledge on this, and we've researched other products as well. But we are trying to go to products that only require ounces per acre, a very small amount. Now, keep in mind, this is an IPM program, so we do use other methods of control besides herbicide. But when we're managing 40,000 acres of open space property and 650 miles of roadside, we do need all the help we can get, actually, to tell you the truth. So we still do use herbicides. We only use herbicides. We don't use insecticides or any of the other products of that type. So it's only herbicides that we use. So hopefully that answered your question.
That does. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Anyone else? Stephen?
Yeah, just briefly, I just want to thank Steve for his work also. And I've called him a couple of times for advice on managing weeds, and he was very generous with his time. So thank you, Steve. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great. Yeah, I think all of us can see in different ways. We appreciate all the work you've done. So thank you, Steve, and good luck in your retirement.
Thank you very much.
Tina, anything more?
Sorry, I was muted. That's it for this month.
Well, okay. So I guess we already had the director's report. Was there anything else from the directors? Co-directors?
I don't think so.
No,
Can you hear
Jeff,
me?
Janice? Yeah, I heard you, Jeff. You're good. So Janice, you're good?
I'm good, thank you.
Yeah,
Great.
thank you.
All right,
Appreciate
well,
all your time.
I guess if there's nothing else from anybody, I'll call this meeting adjourned.